Hello world, and we are back.
Hiya, Georgie.
My name's Kyle Fischl, and this is going to be episode 74 of my poker vlog. Played a lot of poker this weekend, a Friday night session, a Saturday day session, and a Sunday tournament in Tampa, which I did not win.
Welcome to the Losers Club!
Before we get into some hands, my newest RadPoker rating is 1671, and I'm on a 6-game win streak, so gonna try to get that up to at least 1750 by next week. We'll see how that goes, but let's get into some hands. All right, first interesting hand. With one limp to me, I'm in middle position with Queen Jack of Hearts. I raised to $25. The button calls and a limper calls as well, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of Queen Deuce 5 2 hearts. Pretty much a dream flop for me.
Happy dreams, not creepy clown dreams.
When it checks to me, I bet $35. Never really gonna not bet top pair plus flush draw ever. I want to build a pot in case my flush hits. And for the times when it does it, my top pair good kicker should win some of the time. So definitely gonna bet here. It folds to the early position player who goes all in for about 250. Again, pretty good situation here. So we definitely call this one. And my opponent has ace 6 of hearts. So this is actually a pretty good situation as I have top pair and I double block his flush draw. And after a clean run out, the first notable hand of the session goes our way. Next hand of note. It folds to me in the hijack and I have pocket aces. I raised to $20 before the button 3-bets me to 70. And then the big blind calls the 70. Never really gonna just call the 3-bet. I want to definitely commit my opponents to only premiums, as well as I want to be able to have a good ratio to jam on pretty much any flop that doesn't look too scary. So I 4-bet to $300 and the button folds, but the big blind calls. Not too certain how many hands should be in your 3-bet fold to a 4-bet range, but we'll take an uncontested 70 added from that button. And we are heads up to a flop of King 10-4 Rainbow. As this board is relatively dry and relatively unconnected, I think if my opponent has like King Queen, maybe a 10, maybe Queen Jack, something like that, they might pay this off. As well as the fact that he only has about under $250 in his stack and the pot's well over 600. With that ratio, we're definitely gonna just get it all in now. I put them all in and my opponent folds pretty quickly. Either way, always fun to win with aces. Next interesting hand. The table's playing pretty short now, only 6-handed, when under the gun I pick up pocket kings. We don't really only want to pick up the blinds with pocket kings, so we size down this under the gun raise to $15. I'm immediately punished when 3 different players call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop of ace king 3 rainbow. Big blind checks to me and now I have a decision to make. As it's a rainbow board, I feel like any of my opponents who are behind me, if they have an ace, they might bet for me or will bluff when it's checked to them. So when I'm not really worried about any draws out there, I think this is an easy time to slow play and trap. So I check. Unfortunately, both players behind me check as well. So we are 4 ways to a turn card, which is a 3 of spades. Brings a backdoor spade flush draw, but not worried about it as I filled up. Hopefully one of my opponents has a random 3 and they'll be able to pay off a decent sized bet. Well, the big blind bets $45. I decided just call as I think that it's still possible that players behind can add some more money to the pot and make it a smidge bigger. No reason to push the action just yet and scare any of them off. Unfortunately, both of them fold anyway, so we are heads up to the river, which is the 5 of diamonds. My opponent in the big blind does not disappoint me when he puts out a bet of $75. Never gonna just call this one. Hopefully you have a 3. If you have 3-5 or ace 3, that'd be excellent. Get all of the money. So I raised to $220. After a long time of thinking, my opponent actually says that he thinks that we're just chopping. Assuming he has just a random pair of aces, knowing the king would be the kicker for both of us if I had an ace as well, he eventually chooses to call, but king's full is better than a single pair of aces. We are doing really well in this Friday night game. Next hand of note. With one limp to me, I'm in middle position with ace king of clubs. I raise to $30. One late position player calls and the limper calls as well. So we're going 3 ways to a flop of king, queen, 4, 2 diamonds. Top pair, top kicker, great situation for me. When it checks to me, I bet $40, trying to get value from any worse king, any queen, any diamond draws. Can't let these people see a turn card for free. When both players call, it's not really the greatest situation, but either way, we are 3 ways to a turn card, which is the 5 of spades. Now thinking that either one of my opponents could be on a diamond draw and we really have to make them pay to see it. When it's checked to me, I bet $135. For this bet, only the late position player calls, the early position player folds. So we are heads up to a river card of the 8 of clubs. With this specific river card, I think it's pretty easy to go into a check call mode, because if I bet this river card and my opponent had like queen 8 for some reason, it's getting raised every single time and I'm probably gonna have to call some of the time. Conversely, all missed diamond draws can just fold. Where on the other hand, when I check call, any river 2 pair or strong slow played hands are gonna be able to bet, to which I can easily call, and the call would be much less than calling a raise. And additionally, if my opponent had a missed diamond draw, they might take this check as an opportunity to not give up on the hand and go for a river bluff themselves. So that is my reasoning behind checking. And my opponent thinks for a little bit and checks back. I announce ace king and it's good. So a final hand of note for this Friday night session. An early position player raises to $15. There's one caller. I'm on the cutoff with pocket kings. Definitely not going to just call this one. I raise to $70. Definitely going to size up here. Want to commit my opponents to premium hands and price out all the nonsense that's tougher to read post-flop. Only the early position pre-flop raiser decides to call. So we're heads up to a flop of ace 10 4 2 clubs. Always an ace out there. Always. When it's checked me, I play pocket kings on ace high boards the exact same way as I'd play pocket aces and ace king. The line does not change. I begin this one with a standard 1/3 size bet of $55. My opponent calls very quickly, which I'm not really shocked by. I think he would call with most of his range, as that's normally what happens when you have ace king or aces anyway. The small flop bet's not really where you're trying to get the fold. You're trying to turn up the pressure on the turn. That pressure can easily be turned up when it is the 5 of clubs. Now that I have a nut flush draw and I have the specific nut blocker, this is an easy time to turn up the pressure. When I bet big on this turn, weak aces shouldn't really be able to continue. Maybe ace deuce and ace 3 can continue. I think ace 6 to ace 9 has to fold. And maybe even ace jack, ace queen, if they don't have exactly the jack or queen of clubs, they might fold to a turned barrel. As I'm a 3-better, continuer, I'm repping pretty strong here. I bet 140 on this turn card. When I'm called, I'm really hoping one of my 11 perceived outs. I think 2 kings give me the win, as well as 9 clubs, so let's see one of them. Well, the 5 of spades is definitely not one of the cards I'm looking for. Not even close. When it's checked to me, it is the decision if I want to go for the 3rd barrel and bluff it off. The board pairing river is really bad for me to put in a bluff here. If my opponent flopped a set, they're just never folding ever, making a full house. If my opponent has ace no kicker, they might be happier to call, as now the 10 plays if they were worried about kicker problems. Maybe you can make a flush fold, but what flushes are possible that would bet from early position then call a 3-bet? With my specific blocker, maybe the worst he could ever have is queen jack exactly of clubs, as medium suited connectors probably shouldn't have called a 3-bet of the sizing I gave them. I think all better hands are going to call a river bet, and all worse hands would just fold to a bet. So no point in bluffing. I check it back. And my opponent is very disappointed as he shows ace 5 of diamonds. But for this Friday night game, we are there for 6 hours. Into the game for $800. Out of the game for $23.23, which is a profit of $1,523. Across 6 hours equates to $253 an hour or 50 big blinds an hour. Please take a moment, go below, and hit the subscribe button. Thank you.
I guess I must be your friend too.
So, Saturday morning, we did not get enough poker this weekend. We head back and we sit down at a table that looks as if it has ran all night. There are several people at this table with $2,000 stacks when it's an $800 max buy-in. They've been there a while, or this table's crazy. But with one limp to me, I look down at pocket aces. I raise to $35. Well, one late position player calls before the big blind raises to 90. Boy, is it fun when you have aces and you get 3-bet. The late position calling player has one of these $2,000 stacks, and he's a regular that really doesn't like to fold. So I want to size this one up really big here. So I re-raise it to $325. Unfortunately for me, the player with the large stack decides to let this one go, but the big blind calls. And this opponent is definitely on the tighter side, so he has kings or queens. I don't even give him ace-king at this point. So as long as there's no face card on that flop, we will be good to go.
Heads up.
When the flop is 10-6-6, we're good to go.
And now, I'm gonna have to kill this clown.
Even better, my opponent goes all in for me. Nothing to do but call this all in. And we're against pocket kings. And a safe run out and a beautiful start to the first 10 minutes of my Saturday morning session. My hourly is crazy at this point. Next hand of note. There's a $10 button straddle. I'm in the small blind with pocket eights. Definitely gonna raise this one up, not gonna set mine as the table is super deep and I wanna have a range that can give me the ability to make moves on ace and king high boards and not just rely on set mining on this particular hand. One late position player calls and we are heads up to a flop. This player has been the definition of a calling station. He is called with no pair, no draw. He is called with top pair, no kicker. You can't get this guy to fold. When the flop is king 6-4, 2 hearts, being first to act, since I believe he will call with any king all the way down to king 5 offsuit, I think it calls for a check call line for right now. So I check it to my opponent and he checks it back. Probably gonna bluff the turn. Just kidding. We are actually now gonna go for a very trappy check raise on the turn. So I check. My opponent bets $20. I have to raise right now. I'm trying to get myself a good stack to pot ratio to lead jam on the river. As I've said, he's a calling station. I expect him to call with any king for his entire stack. So I raise to $80 right now. He doesn't take too long before calling. When the river is the 9 of diamonds, my opponent has about $300 in his stack. I just truly believe this opponent will call with any king, and I want to get it all. So I go all in, and he doesn't take too long before calling. And I have to show, and we're good. And we take a pretty big pot again. Running well.
My daughter plays better golf than me. She's 12. I caddy now. I don't play golf anymore.
And a final hand of note for this Friday session. I'm in early position with, you guessed it, pocket aces. I raised to $30. Well, 2 late position players call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of king, king, jack, 2 hearts. As it's unlikely that one of my opponents has a king, I could easily have one. I'm definitely gonna bet this one. I can also get paid by flush draws, and maybe hands like queen 10 or 2 hearts. Plenty of hands that can pay me off. I bet $50. Well, only one of the late position players called, so we are heads up to a turn of the 10 of hearts. Not a particularly great card. I check it to my opponent, prepared to call at least 1 bet. Definitely want to pot control a little bit. There are some flushes and some straights that got there. He checks it back. When the river is the queen of hearts, I check to my opponent, and my opponent bets 175. Definitely a really large sizing. This opponent definitely has the ability to bluff here by far. He also has the ability to really thin value bet this with just a king. But either way, I double check my aces. I have the wrong red ace. I really can't call this bet. I fold. And my opponent has king 10 offsuit.
Shit! You know, next time we just go
Raise bluff.
next time!
So I include this hand just because Friday started out with some big wins, but it finished with many of these medium hands that none of which were very big, but they were consistently chipping me down. And this is just one of the examples that were similar to this. So we're into the game for 1,300, had to add on a little bit. Out of the game for 1,678, which across 6 hours equates to $63 an hour or 12 big blinds an hour. If you have watched all the way to this point, thank you, I appreciate it. Please consider hitting the like button, and there will be more to come next week.